Le damos la bienvenida a todas las personas que empiezan a unirse a nuestro webinar informativo del día de hoy con American University School of International Service, SIS, ubicada en los Estados Unidos de América. Este es un espacio fundamental si su proyecto educativo y profesional está orientado y determinado en realizar allí una maestría o doctorado, así que es el espacio idóneo para que puedan resolver todas sus dudas, todas sus inquietudes y profundicen muchísimo más la información que ya quizás contiene. Mi nombre es Karen Martínez, soy asistente del área de Consejería Académica y Relaciones Internacionales de COLFUTURO y me encuentro muy bien acompañada el día de hoy con Jia Yang. Ella es representante de esta institución y nos va a compartir información supremamente valiosa sobre opciones de hospedaje, financiación, recomendaciones y consejos en general para todos ustedes. Adicionalmente, les quiero recordar que Colfuturo tiene un convenio con esta universidad que consta de un 50% de descuento en el valor de la matrícula para 5 beneficiarios de Colfuturo. Nuevamente, la invitación es a hacer todas las preguntas, las inquietudes, las observaciones que tengan al respecto en el cajón de Q&A para que junto con Gia las podamos solucionar al final de la sesión. Por otra parte, si ustedes se encuentran interesados en conocer un poquito más de Colfuturo y de todos los servicios que día a día estamos construyendo para Colombia en general, los invitamos a nuestras charlas el primer viernes de cada mes y el segundo sábado. En ese orden de ideas, este sábado 9 de noviembre a las 9:30 de la mañana, los invitamos en nuestra charla del programa Crédito Beca. Sin más preámbulos, Gia, thank you so much for being here today. We are so happy to have you here. You can go ahead and start your presentation.
All right. Thank you so much, Karen. And hello, everyone. My name is Jia Jia. I am the Director of Admissions here at American University School of International Service, SIS, in Washington, D.C. We are a longtime partner of COLFUTURO, and we have welcomed many COLFUTURO recipients to SIS in the last decade. So I'm particularly excited to be here and meeting with all of you virtually. So I know that Karen shared a little bit with you about the format of the session today, and we have about 30-40 minutes to go through the presentation, and then we will have plenty of time for me to listen to your questions and try to answer them. So with that, we are going to get started. First of all, I want to tell you a little bit about the School of International Service. We always think that the degree that houses your the school that houses your degree is a very important part of your decision-making process, right? So I always like to tell students about the context, the environment in which your degree exists. So SIS is a top 10 School of International Affairs according to the Foreign Policy magazine. So we provide top quality education, especially at the graduate level in international affairs. And the school, we call it the School of International Service versus the School of International Affairs, because we really believe in the value of training our students to be of service to the international community. So a lot of what we do is not just about sort of individual success, right? It's about looking at the communities around you and helping the community sort of succeed. So service to the international community is a very core part of our value. And SIS was actually founded back in the 60s. Based on 50s, actually, over 60 years ago, based on President Eisenhower's vision to wage peace. So it was during the height of the Cold War, and President Eisenhower essentially called upon different university presidents to say that we should really create a human-focused education and curriculum so that our educational system and our students can be ready for a time when the Cold War no longer dominates our foreign policy. So SIS was born in that context, and we are deeply committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, having different voices and different backgrounds in our incoming cohort, so that we have a classroom that's more reflective of the global population. And SIS is also a hub of interdisciplinarity. And we'll talk a lot more about that later. But the idea is that SIS does a lot of studies, not just in political science. We also have historians, statisticians, geographers, medical anthropologists coming together to solve the global issues today. And last but not least, SIS is the first university in the entire United States to reach carbon neutrality. And we did that 2 years ahead of schedule. So we take our commitment to the environment very seriously, and we actually actively apply the kind of sustainability, environmental justice and policy work that we teach in the classroom in real life situations. So that's a little bit about SIS, and I thought as a student, you may be interested in learning who are the students that come to SIS every year. So I'm not going to read through all the numbers here, but I'll just say that, we have a very vibrant community of students that come with very rich international experience, foreign language experience, and many of them are the first generation students, which means they are the first students in their family to receive a college degree. And we also have, a rich sort of spread of international students coming from all continents and many domestic students of color, as part of our community. And in general, over 75% of our incoming students have worked before they came to do grad school. And the remaining 25% come straight out of their undergraduate/bachelor's degree. So we really have a mix of very interesting and diverse experiences in our classroom. And this is something that we are very proud of. And SIS is one of the largest School of International Affairs, which also means that in addition to having a robust student body, we also have over 120 professors that will work with you. To make sure that every classroom is individualized and you have a small classroom size to get the kind of attention that you're looking for from your professors. So before I go into sort of additional SIS details, I actually want to share two stories with you. One is a longtime friend of SIS. Her name is Marcella. She came from Colombia. And she received her Bachelor of Science degree in Science, Communication, and Journalism from Uninorte. And and while she was a student at Uninorte, she also attended Model OAS. So she was a very active student at her university, even though she did not study international affairs or international studies. And during SIS, Marcella studied our MA program in intercultural and international communication. So this is really building on top of her communication and journalism background, but looking at communication sort of at the national level, at the diplomacy level, right? Cross-cultural communication, and how do we do business cross-culturally? Because the way you, let's say, sell this pen in the United States is very different than how you would sell it in Colombia or other cultural contexts. So our intercultural and international communication program is something that Marcella did, and she also worked as a consultant when she was part of the IC degree. She took a trip to China and along with 10 other graduate students, and they worked with an educational organization in China, which is set up by SIS. It's not an opportunity that students have to sort of design on their own. So we give you a set of clients to work with, and Marcella worked as a consultant for that organization. After graduate school, Marcella did a number of different things, but today she is an information technology analyst at the World Bank. And the second story I want to share with you is actually David, who is from Colombia as well. And he was, in fact, a COLFUTURO recipient. He studied economics and business at Universidad Ceci. Apologies for my pronunciation. After he graduated from the university, he worked at the American Chamber of Commerce. So he actually came, unlike Marcella, who had a communication and journalism background, David actually came more from a business and commerce background. And while he was at SIS, he studied governance, global governance, politics, and security, and he was always very busy attending various networking and panel discussion events in Washington, D.C. So he really packed a lot into his degree. And today, he is working at the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, in Washington, D.C. So we are super excited to see our Colombian students having such fantastic successes. And I know that many of them in the past came with the joint support of COLFUTURO and SIS. So what do Marcella and David have in common? We talked about how many students, applying to SIS think that they need to have studied political science or international relations. But Marcella and David actually come from a little bit of a non-traditional background, right? Marcella did journalism, which is not something that you always associate with global affairs. And then David did business and economics, which is related, but business is another sort of semi-non-traditional background that we see. So the School of International Service, because we look at global issues from an interdisciplinary lens, right? The expertise that I talked about, we always welcome students that come from a slightly different background as well, because our classroom discussions are only interesting if our students actually come from different backgrounds. Now, both of the students mentioned here also really engaged in cross-sector work. They may have worked for a private sector previously, and now they're working for an international organization. So the idea is that an SIS degree doesn't just prepare you for one type of work or one particular sector. It is really catered to train individuals coming from very different backgrounds and going into a global career that may still be across different sectors. And last but not least, both Marcella and David packed a lot into their 2 years of time at SIS. They did the consultancy, they did internships, and they did networking, as well as panel discussion activities. So being part of a professional School of International Affairs, what we want our students to do is not just taking classes in the traditional sense, right? We actually want you to be putting yourself out there, making connections, doing internships, and taking advantage of Washington, D.C. as a city has to offer. So enough of the storytelling, and I thought we will take a look at the big picture of where our students usually end up after graduation. So there are a lot of names here, but the bottom line is, even though many of our students apply to SIS saying that they want to be a diplomat, they want to be the ambassador, the reality is that after they start taking classes here, their interests are piqued by a lot of different topics, right? So they start thinking about and exploring other employment opportunities, and which is why you see that about 30% of our students go into the public sector, 31%, actually let me move 31% go into the private, and then 38% go into nonprofit. So the distribution between sectors is relatively even. And we also have many students that move from the government to nonprofit, vice versa. And again, this is all to reinforce the idea is that we, as sort of a top 10 School of International Affairs, doesn't just train you for one type of job in one type of sector. We actually train you with all the skills you need that can move around sectors. And this is especially important because public and private and international organizations collectively do a lot of the work together. And we think that that kind of collaboration is really, really important. So you may have seen a spread of SIS degrees, and I know it's very tricky because we actually offer over 15 different master's programs. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, but I will just say that SIS master's degrees really range from environmental policy, global governance, politics and security, to human rights and conflict, right? You will see 2 gray boxes on this slide. So the Development Management Program, as well as the Master of International Service program, are both degrees are they're both accelerated slash shorter degrees for individuals with a certain number of years of work experience. So DM would require at least 4 years of experience, and then MIS would require at least 7 years of work experience. So there's a pathway for all kinds of interests and backgrounds, and as well as experience levels. And we are happy to be working with students coming from all the backgrounds. And the last row in the slide shows that we have a STEM degree. So this is sort of a more math and quantitative heavy degree where you will have sort of more of an economics and research methodology focus, but you can still study global governance issues, security issues. GGPS is essentially our classic generalist international affairs degree. So if you feel that you are not just interested in the environment, but or human rights, you're interested in a number of topics under the umbrella of international affairs, then GGPS is a degree that you can certainly look into. And similar to GGPS, you will see that we have in the second row here, we have an international affairs policy and analysis program. That is also a program where you don't have to choose a particular thematic area. The IAPA degree is more focused on a very compact set of international affairs skills that you will get to walk away with, and you get to apply those skills to whatever international topic you're interested in. So I just want to highlight those if you are more in sort of the generalist field versus a specialist field, right? A specialist field would be, for example, the International Peace and Conflict Resolution Program, where you really just want to focus on why do we have conflict, how do we mitigate conflict, and how do we do negotiation during a conflict, and how do we do post-conflict reconstruction. So that's a fairly niche topic, and you will see plenty of other examples on this slide, but I just want to give you a rough idea of what is sort of a generalist degree versus a more specialized degree. Okay, moving on to the SIS curriculum. And the infographics you see here essentially says, regardless of the SIS degree you're in, there are these building blocks for your degree. So there will be some core courses that are foundational to your degree. And then we want you to take some economics, some research methodology, because we think that they are core skills you have to graduate from SIS with. You shouldn't really graduate with your degree without one of the two, right? Because they're very important. And then you have an area of concentration that allows you to sort of design the degree to something that you are excited about. So for example, you are in the Global Environmental Policy Program, and you really want to look at environmental policy in relation to conflict, right? Global conflict. So let's say looking at the war in Ukraine and what kind of environmental damage is being done as a result of that conflict, right? This is where within your degree, you get to pull in courses from other degrees to tailor design that concentration. Now, if you don't know what your concentration, you want your concentration to be, we certainly give you a list of recommendations. But if your interests lie in the intersection of 2 and 3, this is where the tailoring really happens. And and I think that our students typically love, the flexibility of their degree because of their ability to be able to get onto the concentration part and sort of play with the courses that they are really passionate about. And then you have an area of electives. And this is where you say, I don't think I have taken enough concentration courses. I want to take more. You can do that. Or we have something called skills institutes, which are weekend crash courses that teach you on a very specific skill. So we will talk more about that on the next slide, but I just want to give you a little explanation first. And then you will see you have an area of capstone, right? So your degree essentially culminates in this final project. If you want to be super research oriented because you're thinking about applying for a PhD program after your master's, you can do a full thesis if you want to for your capstone. But the majority, I would say about 75%, 70 to 75% of SIS students actually don't do a thesis. They do a consulting project. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute as well. So these are the big building blocks of your SIS degree. And the idea is that, we want to give you a structure, a framework, but you will have a lot of say in the process, sort of to tweak the courses and the concentration and the capstone you want, depending on your personal academic and professional goals. And alongside your degree, you are going to have some foreign language experience. Before you graduate, you're going to have some internship and professional experience before you graduate. And because we are a professional school of international affairs, we care very much about our students walking away with their degree with some concrete experience in hand. So I talked about the skills institutes, which are part of your degree. It's an option if you wanted to do it. And here are the topics that we teach for the skills institutes, which are, in essence, crash courses or workshops that happen over a weekend. So for example, if you are interested in working for a nonprofit, but you don't actually know how to do budgeting, how to do data analytics to be financially inclusive, we have a skills institute for you on that topic. If you don't know how to do project management, we have a skills institute for that. And I just listed a very short list of examples, but we actually have a lot more offering every academic year. And for some of our students, right, they are interested in the policy field, but they don't actually know how to write a short policy memo, which sometimes can be more challenging than writing a 3-page paper, right? So these are the skills that we will teach you over a weekend so that you really get the concrete know-hows, as part of your degree. And we also talked about your capstone. I mentioned that you can do a thesis as a form of capstone if you want to go the research route, but many of our students do the practicum, which is a consulting project. And for the practicum, we give you a list of clients to choose from. So you don't have to look for the client. We will give you the list. It could be the US government. It could be an international organization. It could be a nonprofit. It could be 2 organizations coming together, working on a project with our students. And you will work in a group of about 10 to 12 students, and many of them are not going to be from your degree. And we think the beauty is that, it's sort of like a mini future professional project, right? Where you will be working with people from very different backgrounds and people from different teams. So this is really a team working collaboration experience as well. So we will give you the client. You work in a group of about 10 to 12 students. And you will do your analysis, you will do your interview, you will run the data, and you will eventually put your findings into a report or a recommendation or a manual or a policy doc and send that back to the client. So an example of this would be many years ago, we worked with a nonprofit in Washington, D.C. who has funded a project in Liberia. And the project was for youth and conflict prevention, right? So the funder funded the project. They're interested in renewing the project, but they actually had no idea if the project was successful. So they hired our graduate students to do an impact assessment. So our students used about 2 weeks to travel to Liberia, conducted all the interviews, collected all the data, and then they came back and used the rest of the semester to finish their report. And they then submitted their recommendations to the client about whether to renew the funding or not. So this is a fantastic opportunity to be introduced to a real world organization without you having to lift a finger, right? And then you get to work on a really awesome team of fellow graduate students coming with different lenses and perspectives. And I have some examples listed on the slide as well, and happy to provide more examples if anyone is interested. So part two, I want to talk a little bit about the application process. The application process is relatively straightforward. You will submit the online application and you will submit 2 recommendation letters for the master's program, a resume, a personal statement, and you will need to submit an official transcript from Columbia as well. So the definition of official transcript for us is that the transcript has to be sent to us directly by your university. So for the most part, universities overseas have been very capable of sending us the transcript electronically. They would email us the transcript, and the majority of them are not mailing transcripts to us anymore, but if your university has to mail it, that is okay. So you will need to tell the university, the transcript office, the records office of your university to email the transcript to us, and we will then attach it to your online application. Please make sure that if you have graduated already from with your bachelor's degree, your official transcript should list all the courses you have taken, all the grades and scores you have received, and it should also reflect the degree that you have received. So if, in some countries, the degree certificate is separate from the transcript, so you will just need to have them include a copy of your degree certificate as well. If your transcript already says that you have graduated on this day and this is your degree, then you do not need to submit a separate degree certificate. And so it needs to come directly from the university. Anything that comes from you, the student, it may look really official, but unfortunately, we cannot count that as official. So we will still need to have the version from your university before your application can be reviewed. And then application fee. So the application fee is $55. And if you are going to attend our virtual webinar, which you will see in a couple of slides, on November 16th, which is a Saturday, you will get an application fee waiver. Test scores. The GRE is not required. If you are a student from Columbia, the only test score you need to submit would be the TOEFL. We need 100 on the TOEFL, or the IELTS, we need a 7.0, the PTE 68, or Duolingo, which is a lot easier to schedule, I hear, and you need to have 120 on Duolingo. A few quick deadlines. So for master's applications, your priority deadline is January 15th. And for the fall semester, and you can certainly still apply after January 15th, but we will only be able to review applications if we still have seats available for the fall semester. So there is a bit of a risk after January 15th, which is why we strongly encourage you to have everything submitted to us by January 15th itself. And I also want to talk a little bit about funding. So as long as you complete the full application for graduate school for SIS, there is no separate application for funding. On the application itself, there will be a question that says, are you a candidate for an outside scholarship? So if you are applying for COLFUTURO, which I hope all of you are, you will be able to select COLFUTURO from the drop-down menu, so that it is an indication for us that you are applying, you are potentially in the process of applying through the partnership. And so there's no separate application for funding. If you list a COLFUTURO, we will know that. Now, SIS does have a partnership with COLFUTURO where if you are admitted to SIS and if you're selected by COLFUTURO, then SIS will offer 50% of your tuition. So the idea is that, well, I should say the timeline is that if you apply to SIS by January 15th, right, you will hear your scholarship and admissions decision from us sometime around early March. Now, at that point, you may not have completed the COLFUTURO process or have received a decision from them. If you have already been awarded a scholarship from SIS, that is, for example, 30% of your tuition, then when you receive COLFUTURO funding, we will increase your funding, we will increase your SIS funding to 50%. However, if you have already been awarded a scholarship from SIS for 70% of your tuition, then when you receive your COLFUTURO funding, your SIS scholarship will not change because we are already at the 50% mark. I know there are a few moving pieces, but I just want to say that just because you apply early, it doesn't mean that your scholarship cannot be increased to 50% if you end up being awarded. And I'm happy to answer a question about that later. Okay, finally, just to flag for you some of our upcoming virtual events on Zoom. I mentioned that we have a program open house on Saturday, November 16th, where you can come and learn more about the program that you're interested in. And I strongly, strongly recommend that because the more you can learn about the program, the more effort and tailored content you can write into your personal statement so that you will have a stronger application. So highly recommend it, and you will get an application fee waiver as well. We will have some other program sessions. We will have Zoom chat with alums who have graduated from SIS as well as some of the current students. So if you go to the american.edu/SIS/visit page, you are going to be able to sign up for all of the events. Okay, so with that, I think we are very good with timing. I want to see, Karen, perhaps I should pause here a little bit and see if folks have questions.
Perfect. Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for this excellent presentation. You give us today really relevant information. So thank you so much for your disposition and time. So, well, we have some questions for you. So the first question is from Luis, and he's asking, what is the minimum GPA to be accepted? And if it depends of the area, of the study area, sorry.
Luis, thank you so much for this question. So there is no minimum GPA for you to apply to the school. In general, the average GPA for students that enroll at the school is about 3.5. So that means some students above that, some students are below that. We don't, and this is regardless of the program you're applying for. So we don't screen out the application based on your test score or based on your GPA, because we really want to pay attention to every single piece of your application to make that holistic decision. And this is where, you know, if your GPA is what it is, or if you have graduated, right, you shouldn't stress out about your GPA, because there isn't, in all practicality, there isn't a whole lot you can do to change that. You should really focus your energy on writing a strong personal essay, really be intentional about the recommenders that you look for that can submit letters for you, because the stories that they provide that you tell us are very crucial aspects of your application as well. So
perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah. Well, about recommendations, what are you looking for from us? How is the personal statement works?
So recommendation letters are, as I mentioned, you know, for master's programs, you need 2 recommendation letters, right? And I understand that, you know, in a lot of non-US cultures, there isn't always the practice of asking for recommendation letters. So it's a very strange thing that US universities ask for. But the idea of asking for it is that, you know, we know that sometimes we don't all do well in an exam, right? A standardized test or a grade isn't always reflective of what we are able to do. This is why we want to hear from the people that you have worked with to tell us your readiness for graduate school, your potentials to succeed. So the letters are asked for to give us a better picture of who you are and what you've done. That's not just a number. So that's number 1. Number 2 is your recommenders will be sent a form, and there will be a few questions that your recommender will be asked to provide. So it's more about, you know, is the student ready for grad school? What do you think about their overall academic ability, so on and so forth. And your recommender would then attach a letter to that form that is written by themselves. So the letter would essentially need to tell us, based on the capacity that you worked with a recommender, it could be from a professional source, it could be from your professors if you're in touch with your professors, right? We want to know how you did academically or professionally. Are you ready for grad school? What kind of skills did they witness that you learn during your time together? And how have they seen you grow academically or professionally? So this is why you probably don't want to go to a recommender with whom someone who has a very big title but hasn't really worked with you. We want to hear from people that have seen you grow over time. And you want to set them up for success. So don't just say any recommendation letter for the graduate program, right? Tell them a little bit about the program, the school, include a copy of your resume so that you can help them remember the things that you have done. The more you can prepare them, the better they're going to be able to write your letter. Personal statement is a very, very important part of your application because this is where you get to tell us, why you decided to apply for SIS and this particular degree. Oftentimes we get very generic statements, right? When you swap out the name of the school, you almost can't tell which school it is written for. So that's a little test for yourself is that, we read your personal statement to understand whether you have done research about our program and why have you decided that this is the right program for you. So those are all elements of the statement that we want to hear. We have separate webinars about how to write the statement. I don't want to overload this session with this particular criteria, but do your homework, write it in your own voice and write it authentically, and tell us sort of the big picture of where you want to be headed, as well as sort of your experiences and qualifications that have prepared you, for this degree.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to start studying in 2025, when should I apply for admission?
Yeah, so if you're looking at starting the degree in August of 2025, your application deadline, and I'm going to go back to the slide here. Your application deadline the priority deadline is January 15th. And like I said, you can absolutely apply after the 15th. It's just that if our seats are all full, then we won't be able to review any more applications. So it's best if you apply by the deadline if you can.
Perfect. And the last question we have is, does the university offer job opportunities for graduates or students, and maybe in research projects or something like that?
So the university does have some job opportunities, right? Some of our students work as a teaching or research assistant. And if you are awarded an assistantship, then when you receive your admission letter, it will say that you have been awarded. So in those instances, you will be working with a professor to do teaching or research. But if you don't get one of those assistantships, you will still be able to apply for other jobs on campus at American University. They don't necessarily have to be from the School of International Service. So I would say that students have done very different things, right? International students can work up to 20 hours a week on campus when school is in session. So you can work in the library, you can work, at a different office on campus. Those are all options. One thing I would caution our students is that sometimes our students are relying on one campus job to cover the majority of their tuition, and that does not happen. The income from a campus job is available and possible to cover some of your living expenses, right? Offset, I should say, not cover, offset some of your living expenses, but it's not a major source of income that can cover, big ticket items. So.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gia.
No
This is
problem.
all the questions. So again, thank you for your disposition, your time, your participation, for all the information that you give us today. Everything you mentioned today sounds so good. So thank you so much. This destination looks very interesting indeed. So we look forward to seeing you in a next opportunity. Thank you, and see you in a next time.
Sounds great. Thank you, Karen. And thanks everyone for being here. And good luck with your COLFUTURO process. All right. Take care.
Thank you, Gia. A
Bye
todos
bye.
nuestros asistentes, mil gracias también por participar en esta sesión, por sus preguntas y su interés. Los invitamos a estar muy pendientes de todas nuestras sesiones informativas en el mes de noviembre, en las que incluiremos a todas las universidades de convenio ubicadas en los Estados Unidos. Mil gracias a todos y que tengan una feliz noche. Bye, Gia. Thank you so
Bye
much.
bye. Thank you.